Just take a look at pretty much any B2B website, and literally every company claims to be customer-centric. But as we all know from our own experiences as a consumer, most companies are nowhere near as customer-centered as they claim. Today, I'm sitting down with Shakeel Bharmal of Summit Group to explore third box thinking, a simple yet really powerful approach that challenges the conventional focus on short-term revenue in favor of deeper customer-centered growth. Shakeel shares his experience helping companies pivot from a me-first mentality to a customer-first mindset, breaking down why customer understanding remains a top priority despite all the tools and data available to account management teams today. This episode offers you a clear path to meaningful, mutually beneficial relationships with your customers, an approach that can drive exponential growth when done right. I hope you enjoy my conversation with Shakeel Bharmal. Hey, Shakeel, great to see you, my friend. Thanks so much for joining us today on the Account Management Secrets podcast.
My pleasure. It is really great to see you again. And I think the last time we were together was at a conference you organized, and it's been a long time. It's been a few years since we
that was about 2.5 years ago, something like that. That was CamCon 2022 in Boulder. And a lot's changed since then. We launched Amplify, and a lot of really exciting things are happening. And I know that you've continued to deepen your work in the account management space. And you do a lot of work specifically around helping companies to understand where are we, what's the plan with our customer, how can we really be that true strategic partner with our clients. And I know that you also are very involved with SAMA, the Strategic Account Management Association, and that's a great group that's also helping to kind of elevate the entire industry and all the discussion about what we do as account managers. But I wanted to start off here today just to get your perspective on things. So you work with a lot of companies that are trying to elevate or improve the way that they do account management, the way that they retain their customers, get more profitability from their existing clients over time. What are you noticing about your continued work there? What are you seeing happening in the market today?
Yeah, so it's interesting that I'm busier than I've ever been, and that's great for me personally. But if I step back and say, what is that suggesting about what's going on in the world today? Is that given how much is changing in so many industries, companies across industries are really looking at the way they manage their customer relationships, reevaluating it, shifting the way they organize around customers inside their organizations. So we've been doing a lot of workshops and customized kind of change management initiatives for organizations trying to elevate their key account management approach, strategic account management approach, customer centricity, internal collaboration around customers. And one of the things we do at the beginning of every engagement is with the leaders and then with the key account managers or strategic account managers themselves, is we'll put up a list of kind of key skills that are required to be developed just to get their sense on where they see their personal area of focus and development. And it goes everywhere from, customer facing, understanding customer issues, all the way through working inside your organization, identifying the right solution, articulating value, executing and sustaining. Like there's probably, 15 or so different sub-skills that fall in those categories. And, I've been around the sales world for a long time. I'm sure you have as well. And the number one thing we've talked about for decades was customer centricity and understanding customers' issues. But still, in 2024, the number one thing that comes up, every individual will name the first thing they have to work on is their ability to deepen their understanding of customers' issues, business challenges, the customer's desire for improving their operations. And then second and third varies depending on the individual person.
Yeah.
But it's still consistently the first thing mentioned as the primary area of development. And it's interesting because sometimes that makes sense, of course. That is, the big priority in taking on this kind of approach. But other times it's like surprising that after decades and decades of business talking about customer centricity, put yourself in the customer's shoes, it's still seen as the primary area of development for people.
Yeah, no, that's wild to hear. And when you think about the amount of tooling that your typical account manager gets, it's even more surprising because
Right.
they all have, software systems and some, subscriptions to research and data reports. You've got AI, you've got all this sort of stuff, around you to support you, and people still aren't able to truly know their customers all that well, right? I mean, that's really what you're talking about here. So, is this because they're like, why do you think this is? Are we not using the tools that we have? Did the portfolios all grow so much so I just don't have time? Are people falling back into bad habits or being lazy? Like, what do you think's going on here?
I think there's a number of reasons, but if you were to ask me to pick one, it really comes down to mindset of the individual that's driven by the mindset of the leadership of their organization.
Ooh, all right.
And,
Let's explore
and
that one then.
yeah, so what I'm seeing is there's so much pressure around driving revenue, driving growth of our existing products and services to impact the bottom line. And it seems reasonable, right? Of course, every company's trying to grow their revenue. The problem is that in organizations, that intent to drive our revenue growth is almost translated literally through every level of the organization, so that by the time it gets to the customer facing folks, that driving revenue growth translates into let's get our customers to order more and buy more from us, which goes back to that traditional mentality of
Yep.
I have something, I want the customer to buy from me, I
Mm-hmm.
want the customer to choose me over a competitor, I want them to lengthen the contract they have with me. I want them to accept increases in prices. It's all about what I want the customer to do based on what I care about.
Sure.
And nobody says that explicitly, right? But that's underlying what I'm seeing is this mindset is still focused around what do we need for our business to succeed instead of what do we need to do to help the customer's business succeed.
Man, and that is such a valuable point, and it's such an important framing because everyone claims to be customer centric, right? You look at every single website, 90% of them somewhere say how much they love their clients and how customer centric they are. In reality, that's not the case. And you can tell, to your point, you can tell by the internal meetings. How do we talk about the customer when we're talking about our business? And are we being too focused on ourselves? So, like, are we just looking at our needs? And like you're saying, if the edict from the top and the edict that's just in the DNA of the company is grow revenue no matter what, keep growing,
Yeah.
extract more revenue from customers, then
Yeah.
I'm going to find every possible shortcut. I'm going to do everything I can to make sure I'm hitting those KPIs because that's how I'm getting incentivized,
Yeah.
right? And
Absolutely.
what you're talking about is this mindset shift to say, hey, what if instead of looking, being all me centered, I was actually living and breathing customer
Absolutely.
centric. And here's the thing, and I want to get your thoughts on that. If you do that, you have the opportunity. If you really become customer centric, in my mind, you have the opportunity not to grow your revenue by 10% or 20% or 50%. You have the opportunity to 5x or 10x your revenue, but it
Absolutely.
requires a change in mindset and like really thinking about this differently, right?
Absolutely. It requires that change in mindset. And, talking about multiplying revenue, the beauty of it is that if you do it well, not only will you build loyalty and strengthen the buying behavior of the customer from you, but in collaboration with the customer, you end up developing new ideas, innovations, new products and services that you can take from that relationship and scale and expand and offer it to other customers and other businesses. And so there's nothing really to lose. And so there's so much upside in shifting the mindset. If I can offer you one other connection here, is that I may take a group of the key account managers or salespeople or SAMs and get them to buy in over the course of several weeks or months through working together that absolutely this is the right thing to do, and they start practicing and applying it to their accounts that they're working on. But increasingly, what I'm noticing is that leaders, the managers of these CAM, SAM salespeople, are not following through in their coaching.
Okay.
And it actually doesn't have to be very complicated.
Right.
I always tell these leaders is that in your follow-up engagements with your people, when they present customer issues and opportunities to you, ask them 4 simple questions. What's the customer business issue? Like, what's going on in their business? How do you know for sure? What can we do to help them? And what's next? Simple questions.
Simple questions. Yeah.
And I say to them, even if you hear the answers to these questions, meaning that you don't have to ask them, still confirm back to them, hey, so I'm hearing you say that the customer's issue is this. And I'm hearing you say that you've confirmed because you've talked to a few different people. It's just regular conversation that focuses on the customer's business, reinforced on a regular basis, I think is a key way to drive change. I don't think it has to be complicated, but it does require a mindset shift first and then a daily behavioral change.
Well, I mean, plus if they don't follow through, if managers aren't out there implementing what you're coaching on or what you're working with them on, they're just burning money, right? It's an extremely ineffective way to get any change to happen. When we think about this challenge of I'm not truly customer centric, or I don't know my customer as well as I ought to, or as well as I could, I know that you rely on a very powerful tool developed by Summit Group called third box thinking. And this is something I've seen you present this several times. It's an incredibly simple and very, very powerful tool. And it's like one of these things where once you do it once, it's like once you see it, you can't unsee it, sort of thing. It's that effective. But for everyone who's listening to this podcast who hasn't experienced third box thinking, Shakeel, give us a sense of what this tool is all about.
Yes, it's I was introduced to it just over 20 years ago. And it's over time become almost a religion for me of a way of looking at the world, to be honest, not just, business, but just personal relationships. So here's the underlying premise of third box thinking, that traditional selling is what do I have and how do I get other people to care about it? We know that doesn't work. Okay, so the next alternative to that is to teach people how start with what the customer cares about. Right? That's the next obvious step is let's start with what they care about and work backwards from there. They call that customer centricity, if you will. The problem with that is that when you look at what the customer cares about, you can't help but look at what the customer cares about from your lens of what business you are in.
Right.
So third box thinking says, if you are box 1, your company, your customer is box 2, their customer is box 3. So it's a little bit of a mind trick. By beginning the analysis on your customer's customer, otherwise known as box 3, you are now looking at the world not through your lens of what does the customer care about, but you're looking at the world through the lens of your customer's customer and looking at your customer from their customer's perspective.
Right.
And it's a very quick, it's kind of a life hack as a way of tricking your mind to step out of your own shoes and step way over there into your customer's customer shoes. And your customer's customer, in most cases, doesn't care about you. They care about the person they buy from.
Right.
And they care about their own life. So it's that bit of that hack. And oftentimes people say to me, well, how do I know what the customer cares about without getting the research? Or I said, well, hang on a second. If the customer's customer, if you go all the way, because we say third box thinking, but it's really end user thinking. Go all the way to the end, and it's very likely that you are that person.
Right.
You are the buyer of whatever it is the end of that value chain. And if you're not, you likely know somebody who is. And so it's not hard to tap into your empathy and actually ask those questions. And we have some great tools now, personas, AI, all sorts of tools you can use to say, hey, if I was a person of this age using this kind of product, what would I care about? And you can then work backwards. Okay, if that's what the customer's customer cares about, the third box, now let me go backwards and say, how is my customer trying to create value for their customer? And what else does my customer care about?
Mm-hmm.
You fully flesh that out, then you come back to you and say, now that I see how my customer is trying to create value and what my customer is trying to do for their own business, now I can look at what I have in terms that are relevant to helping them be more successful in their business and creating value with their customers. Yeah. It's so simple, but that's the power, is the simplicity.
Well, what I love about third box thinking is it recognizes a very simple truth, which is that everyone has a customer, right? Right. Even if Absolutely. Even if I do internal stuff, I still have an internal customer. Or in some cases, my customer is a family member or a partner, for example, or whatever it is. But we get ourselves in this orientation that everyone is doing something for their customer.
We all serve somebody.
We all serve somebody. And the point there is like, how can we be of service? And this is such a critical thing for an account manager, is to put themselves in the mindset that says, my job is to be of service to this person, Absolutely. This company, to help them do their job, to help them get promoted, to help them look good, to help them be more successful, etc. And one of the ways that I've talked about this in the past with folks is like, your customer, and you alerted this before, but your customer, and for sure your customer's customer, did not think about you when they woke up this morning. Exactly. Right? They thought about themselves and their customer, just like you woke up thinking about your customer. Right. And so we kind of, this tool brings that together and gives us a really great framework for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And if I can add, I said this is an important life principle, like just step away from our roles in business and driving revenue growth and all of that. Let's just think of ourselves as human beings on this planet. Imagine what the world would be like if we all thought about how can the people we serve be more effective, more impactful at serving the people they serve. And imagine if every human being on this planet took that approach of wanting to help the people that they serve the people they serve. Can you imagine the ripple effect of impact and change that would happen? And so I think that I see using this principle in business is actually, and some people might laugh at me, find it cheesy, but I feel like committing myself to do this in the business world is really my way of trying to make an impact on the world overall, because I think there's no other profession, maybe other than physicians and healthcare workers and other helping professions. There is no other profession in the business world like SAMs, CAMs, and salespeople whose job it is to touch huge parts of the economy, right? You measure success based on how many interactions, relationships you have with people in the companies you work with. And so if you're touching that many people, I might as well take an approach that talks about how I can help them serve others. Mm. And that is a really beautiful cascading metaphor for me.
So this is really about getting customer-centric, and we're overcoming this natural tendency to be like, how do I find people to buy my stuff? And we're even getting over some of those mind games of saying, well, what does the customer care about? And how can I therefore get them to buy more of my stuff? Right. What we're doing here is saying, who does the customer think about when they wake up in the morning? And what are the challenges that person is trying to solve? Absolutely. And so my posture, therefore, is completely different. You said the word empathy. So my posture is one of empathy. Exactly. I then am able to be more curious about what's happening here, about what's going on. And this is like the opposite of the tactical, hard selling, shortcuts, doing whatever we can to get one more order or slightly increase value or whatever. This is really changing how we're thinking about stuff. So Absolutely. What I'd love to hear from you is, what are the things that we can do to get started? So someone listening to this and like, yeah, okay, great, I get that. Where does this get documented? How does this get done? What do I share with the customer? What do I share with my team? Like, how do I take step one?
Yeah, I mean, a simple first step that it's always my starting point with people is literally take a piece of paper, pick a customer relationship, and draw out the value chain,
So just
starting with
boxes. Did boom, boom,
boxes,
boom.
starting with yourself in box one and go as far to the end as you can. Don't limit yourself to 3 boxes, right? And
Okay.
there's multiple steps in the chain. So, you are the first box, and the end user or whatever product is the end output of whatever your customer feeds into. That's the last box. And then, so I say, do that by yourself first. Draw that picture and then start with that end box. And I always like to say, first try giving it a shot yourself. Like, imagine that customer, maybe imagine yourself and think about all the things that you seek. What's important to you in life? We work a lot in health sciences. So in life sciences, the patient is the end, right? And so we can all be in those positions to think of the patient. But in any industry, the end consumer, if you are stuck or if you get to a point where, yeah, I've got 6 or 7 things that I think they're seeking, go to an AI tool and say, you are the end user of this type of product. What is it that you care about? Describe your needs. Tell me what matters to you beyond the product.
Right.
And you ask that question, you'll get a few more bullet points. So that, I think, is the place to start. And then the natural next step is to keep working backwards.
Yeah.
How does the person that serves that person, what do they care about? What are they trying to achieve? And just keep going back. And the more you do it, the more opportunity there is to spark that human caring empathy, and the easier it is to get out of your own head as far as what do I want. By the time you get to the end, you've already seen the world differently. And now you look at your own set of products, services, and capabilities and say, I have to be pretty creative if I want to find a way to be relevant based on all these things. I can't hit all of them, but are there 1 or 2 things for each box that's something that I do, a product I have, a capability that our company has, but even more important, what is it, the capability that I have as a human being, as a person, as an expert, as an experienced individual with networks and ideas? What can I bring to bring to that? And that, I think, is the first step. And I've had people do that in, anywhere from 15 minutes to an hour. And you have a beautiful picture of what that looks like. That's a good starting point. There's many possible steps from there.
Yeah. Well, it's not a big ask, right?
Right.
So it's yes, you have to find 30 to 60 minutes to be able to sit down and do this work. But when you start to write all this stuff down, you're going to get insights, you're going to get inspiration, you're going to start having fun, you're going to be able to like connect dots that you've not been able to connect before,
right.
And you're going to learn so much about the customer. Now,
Yeah.
I just want to like make this point very, very clearly for people who are listening. If you do this and you start to write all this stuff out and you go show your customer, you are going to blow their mind because nobody else is doing this. They're not even doing this, right? So you go to them and you say,
Exactly.
hey, I've been thinking about your business. I've been thinking about what's going on, and I've made some. You probably have to say something like this. So I want you to correct me if I'm getting the lingo wrong here, Shakeel. But presumably you go in and you say, "Hey, I've been thinking about your business. I really got into this particular frame of mind around the things that you're working on. I made some guesses and assumptions about what you're concerned about, and therefore what your clients and far on down the value chain are thinking about. Here's my draft of like what I think the big picture is here." And you're getting their feedback. And literally, they're just like, their minds are blown, right?
Yeah, I'm smiling on the outside and the inside because that is almost literally what I suggest as a next step to the people that I work with. Once you do that, show it to them, get their reaction. And even if you are wrong, you have got their interest. You have shown them that I'm thinking about more than myself. I'm thinking about you. And you're in a conversation about their business. Mm-hmm. And you're helping them think about their business in a way they may have not even thought about it. Yeah. I have a great story that I always carry with me. I ran a session with an organization several years ago, and then I released them, and I said, "Go practice this stuff." And then I came back a month later and brought them back in the room, and one woman in the group said, I've been trying to get in to see the principal of this really large car dealership group, and I was never able to get a meeting. I couldn't figure out the right words to say. I walked in one day after having done this exercise, and I just knocked on the door and sheepishly went in and said, "Sir, I've been thinking about your business, and I have a feeling I have some thoughts to share with you that might help us look at our relationship differently. If I could just get 5 minutes of your time to just show you a picture." So she went in the room, and she decided, spur of the moment, not to show the picture. She saw a big whiteboard. And she said, "Actually, I'd like to draw it for you." And she turned it into a little bit of a workshop with the dealer principal. And he's like, at first, "What are you doing on my whiteboard?" But it turned into an hour-and-a-half conversation where this dealer principal then invited his staff into the room to work this all out. And they came out with 3 or 4 ideas and initiatives on ways that this company could help them impact the end customer. So super powerful, and that's why it's a religion. It works every single time. You will get some impact.
To the point around in that example you just made, account managers are always struggling to get higher up the ladder, right? Everyone's always gets told, go call higher, where's the C-suite, VP, whatever it is. And this is a fantastic tool to have in your toolkit, because here's what happens. You're naturally going to hit up against the knowledge, expertise, and point of view of people in the room, and you're going to go blaze straight past that. Right? And all of a sudden they're going to say, "Oh, I don't have that answer. Let me go find my boss, or let me go find my boss's boss and get a bigger perspective on this." And so if one of your challenges is that part of relationship management, to make sure the higher ups are aware of who you are and what you do, and so that you can show value to them, then this is a really great way to do that.
Absolutely. I think that's it. And, one of the things that we've done with some organizations is they've said, "Okay, well, this is great, but we also see it as a way of aligning our entire organization to the end customer and user of the value chain." So we've had sessions where we've actually gone into organizations, taught the framework to finance, to legal, to manufacturing, to the warehouse system, to customer service. And so what then ends up happening is you start aligning the entire organization with the same language and way of thinking. It not only improves the alignment of the organization to deliver value to the end customer, it builds improved culture in the organization. Because if I'm going to be empathetic to the needs of the end user, along the way, I can't help but be empathetic to you, because you are serving the customer that serves the customer that serves the customer. So it's a really great framework to just build better cultures as well.
So we talked about how to get started, and it's simple. You're literally just writing down these 3 boxes to start with, and maybe you add some onto that. But the boxes are simply saying, what do I care about? What does the customer care about? What does their customer care about? And so on down the chain in a very explicit way. So I think we all understand how this can be powerful for a single account manager working on a single account.
Right.
How do I roll this out to a bigger group? How do I get buy-in from everyone else? What do you do when people say, "Oh, Shakeel, that sounds great, but it sounds like a lot of work," or "That sounds great, but I have a portfolio of 20 accounts or 50 accounts. There's no way I could do this for all of them." How do we get bigger, more buy-in?
Yeah. So that's a good question. I mean, that's what keeps me in business. That's what I do on a regular basis, right? With companies is one thing to be super clear. It's not as simple as saying, "I'm going to start doing this myself." Yes, you will impact things. You will make things better for yourself. But really where change happens is when you get a whole organization working this way. And so if I'll tell you, the reality of it is that it takes multiple conversations and weeks. And there's a broader framework around third box thinking that says, okay, now that I understand the whole value chain, I really have to hone in at some point on what my customer cares about. And if I can use this exercise to then start conversations to identify, really important initiatives in my customer's business, then I can say, okay, well, I've identified these 3 initiatives that are really important for you. Well, who else in your organization would this matter to? And what else do those individuals care about? And what else can I bring you from our organization to help? And in fact, how can I use third box thinking to align multiple stakeholders in your customer organization? Because oftentimes our customer organizations aren't aligned themselves.
Yeah.
So you have to kind of use it as a framework to do that. And then how do we use it to actually execute? So third box thinking really is a starting point. You still have to go down the rest of the path, which is, okay, now that I understand, how do I identify what we bring? How do I co-create solutions? How do I articulate the value of the solutions and measure the ROI, communicate the ROI? How do I set up an action plan for execution? Look, it sounds complicated because there are multiple steps, but I guarantee you that the third box is the right starting point for starting that conversation. But the other fundamentals are still critical. It's not enough to go in there and do a third box picture and say, "Thank you very much. I hope you'll do business with us."
Right.
You got to follow through with specific initiatives and execution.
And so, how do we think about the appropriate customer for this? Like where we're going to have the biggest impact. When you're talking, I'm thinking, okay, this really only works for your strategic accounts, so your top like 5%, or maybe your key accounts, your top 20%, or something like that. What's the typical cutoff, or how do we segment this a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, this is a way of thinking for me. So here's what I say is you could use third box thinking on every single one of your customers in your territory. Because eventually it's not about pulling out a piece of paper and writing it down. Eventually, if you do it enough times, it becomes the way you think. Right?
Yeah.
It
And
just
the way
becomes
you
awesome.
talk, the way you communicate.
Exactly. It's just the way you think. The first several customers you work on it with is your learning, but eventually it becomes just the way you operate and think. However, what I will say is the full suite of other exercises, tools, and capabilities you can surround third box with, that should probably vary based on the size of the customer, the value of the relationship, the way the customer views you as a partner. So for me, it's less about the industry customers in or even the size of the customer. It's about thinking about four dimensions. This is how I think about it. Probably more than four dimensions, but I like to keep it simple. One is, what's the value of the customer to your company? Right? If this is a valuable customer to our organization, it's good business, it's worth investing more time. So let me do that. To what extent does this customer view you as a partner, or can they view you as a partner? If they're a customer that's only focused on being transactional, or your individual contact of the company is only transactional and will not engage in a conversation where they will share information with you, probably not a good customer to start working with. Because you need insight, you need information, you need them to be willing to look at your third box picture and share information with you. So that's number two. Do you have an opportunity to be competitive in the list of choices that customer has to work with, right? Do they actually, if they're not working with you today, can they see themselves switching from whoever they're working with to move to you? Maybe there's some locked in costs, long-term contracts, that type of thing. It doesn't mean you don't do it. It just, you have to prioritize your time.
Okay.
And then number four, I say is this a customer that will eventually see you as a trusted advisor? Is this a customer that will become a reference point for you? Will this be a customer that will help you tell a really great story? And those would be the four things that I draw on.
Okay, so we have some type of way of looking across the portfolio when we want to invest not just in third box thinking, but then realizing all the things that have to happen to really kind of blow this up.
Yeah.
So we're going through those questions there. That will help us get a sense. And are you usually starting off with like one single pilot customer or one per person? Yeah. What do you recommend?
Yeah, I usually have people start with one customer. So perfect example, I'm working with a company in life sciences. And just yesterday, I was in a workshop with them. And what I had each individual in the group do is identify one customer they want to work through for the entire program. And in between each working session, they go off and validate with the customer. And so I use these criteria to ask the customer to pick a customer to work with, and then we work through it. And that's your first one. And then at the end of a series of working sessions, we say, okay, go execute, and we'll talk again in 2 months, and we'll reflect back on how it's going. Now, what happens is the people that really buy in start doing it with every one of their customers.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the ones that don't, once you come back and revisit it and they see the impact, now we start talking about, okay, how do we scale this? How do we make it relevant to every one of your customers? What's the framework on deciding who you do this with 100% and who you do it with 70% and 50%? That's the conversations we had. Start with one first.
Very, very cool. And this is a really tremendous tool to be offering here to folks. And I want to leave the community actually with a challenge, which is we learned from Shakeel how to immediately start to implement third box thinking. So, and as Shakeel said, you can do this with all of your customers. And so the challenge that I want to offer is get started today, look across your customer set, start to think about their customer's customer and what's keeping them up at night so that you can have better, more meaningful, more strategic conversations with your clients. And then once you do that, so that's the challenge, is do that. And then once you do that, see how your business grows as a result. So that's my challenge / invitation to everyone who wants to get started on this.
Excellent. Thank you. That's a good challenge. You're being in service of people by encouraging them to do it. Let's hope you get some stories back in the community.
Yes, and we want to hear your stories. We want to hear the success that's happening. Well, hey, Shakeel Bharmal, great to see you as always. Yeah. Thanks so much for joining us, and really appreciate the deep dive into third box thinking today.
It's my honor. Thanks for having me.